Good evening, I'm Jeff Hunt. I'm District Attorney Jeff Hunt. I'm a Republican District Attorney. I'm very proud to be a conservative Republican. I've been elected 5 times in Henderson, Polk, and Transylvania counties. That's my district. I used to also have McDowell and Rutherford before the Democrats in the legislature split our district. I've run 5 times and been elected 5 times. I've unseated an entrenched Democrat DA. And again, I'm proud to be a DA. I'm running for Congress, and I'm asking for your support tonight and for your vote on May 8th. I'm running for Congress because we have got to get control of the unsustainable deficit that is out of control in Washington. We can't even begin to work on the national debt, which is $15.5 trillion, until we get down to a zero deficit balanced budget in Washington. And you and I know that the America that we grew up in is not going to be here anymore if we don't get back on the right track. It's not something that can be done in the snap of a finger. It's going to take several years. It's not just one congressional term. It's going to take several congressional terms. But we've got to get a balanced budget by reducing federal spending and not by raising taxes. And when we do that, ladies and gentlemen, when we just start instituting the program to do that, we will have an explosive private sector job growth just like we had in the 80s under Ronald Reagan. So that's my jobs plan, is to get control of our debt and to send the message to the private sector that it's time, because we're now sustainable again on the federal level, it's time to start hiring. The other point I'd like to make about the private sector is during the 80s when Reagan was elected president, he put together a commission which sat down and repealed, rolled back tens of thousands of useless regulations. And once we get control of the debt and the deficit situation, if we will roll back these kinds of regulations, like the EPA regulations that are out of control, like regulations that keep us from going in and getting our own energy and becoming energy self-sufficient, if we roll back those regulations, we will have an explosion of job growth. Jobs are created in the private sector. You and I know that. Jobs are not created in the public sector. So the whole goal is to trigger our private sector, reduce the size of government. And I would describe myself, ladies and gentlemen, to you as a Christian conservative, a fiscal conservative, a free market, free enterprise capitalist, and a constitutionalist. And if you send me to Washington, if I am honored enough to be your congressman, I will judge every problem based on the polar star of our Constitution. Now, I've been elected 5 times because the people in my district trust me, because I do what I say I'm going to do, and I tell them what I've done after we've done it. We've opened up the process so they know what's going on in the DA's office. DAs spend their whole lives working with the Constitution. I do that on a daily basis. DAs spend their lives making wrongdoers accountable for what they've done. And as a DA, I've held myself accountable to a high standard of professionalism and the highest degree of ethical conduct. And I hope that you will send me to Washington, because I will apply exactly those same accountability standards if you give me a chance in Washington. I'm asking for your support tonight, and I'm especially asking for your vote on May 8th. Thank you.
Jeff, you're too tall there. I want to welcome Mark Meadows.
He's sitting in the mouth.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. This makes our 39th time back to Caldwell County. And most of you I know by your first name. And if I don't, I promise that I will do my best to make sure that I know it before I get out of here tonight. But one of the things I shared when I got here back in September is that what we need to make sure of is that we have a congressman who will represent the district, the entire district, and make sure that those counties that are on the fringe are not forgotten. because sometimes they can be, especially with this new district. This is 3 hours from my house, and yet what we see is, and some of you know where I live, there's not a straight road between my house and here, but as we look at it, one of the things that we need to make sure of is that as we represent the people of this district, that we stand for certain principles. I stand for life, liberty, and less government. I'm unapologetically pro-life. I believe that marriage is between one man and one woman, period. I stand for liberty, which means that we need to protect our Constitution. We need to make sure that we don't allow liberal judges to interpret the Constitution, make the laws, because that's Congress's job. We need to make sure that we protect our Second Amendment rights and that we stand up for that. We also need to make sure that we honor our veterans and our commitments to our veterans who have served us well to defend freedom. As we go on, less government means a couple of different things. We need to cut back on regulations. Ensure the regulations that we have are strangling businesses and they're sending them overseas. Why do businesses go over there? They can make more money and they don't have to deal with the regulations that our government's put on them. And so we need to make sure that we cut back those regulations. We also need to look at limiting the wasteful spending that we do. Why do we give foreign aid to China when we borrow money from them? It just doesn't make any sense. And so as we look at this, we need to make wise business decisions. I'm a conservative Christian businessman that believes we need to take a business approach to Washington, D.C. As we look at this, it's going to be painful. You know, some people have said, you know, when Jimmy Carter, when inflation was double digits, when we had gas lines, and many of you remember gas lines, right? You had an odd tag, you got to get in line on the odd days. Even you got to get in line, and we couldn't even find gas. And he said our best days are behind us. And Ronald Reagan came in and said that is phooey. And many people are saying today that our best days are behind us, and I'm here to say phooey. They're not. We need to take back our country. We need to make the sacrifices that are important. But more importantly, we need to stand up as a people and do that. I want to share a story with you. It's the story of a horse and a rider on the back of the Delaware Quarter.
1 minute.
And that Delaware Quarter, many people thought was Paul Revere. It was actually a guy by the name of Caesar Rodney. Caesar Rodney was from Delaware, and when we were looking at the founding of our nation, he rode through the night all the way to Philadelphia to be the signer, the final signing, to make sure that the birth of our nation happened. Why was that important? Because what Caesar Rodney had was a green scarf across his face that covered a cancer. And the only place that cancer could be operated on was back in England. So he was signing his death warrant. And what he was doing is making sure that we had a nation. And he was willing to sacrifice. And we need to sacrifice as a people. We have a nation that is too glorious to give up on. A history that is too precious to forget. A constitution that is too noble to be rewritten. And a God who still reigns over the affairs of this nation. And we still have a people who are willing to stand up and take back our country for our sake and for the...
My name is Vance Patterson. I am your local candidate here from the old 10th District. I live about 20 miles from here over in Burke County, so you can always find me when you need me once I am your congressman. I'm a father of 4, married 37 years to my wife, Mary Jo. I'm a Tea Party Republican. I initiated the first Tea Party over in Burke County in 2009 and have spoken at 4 Tea Parties since. I'm a Republican voting conservative since Nixon in '72. I'm an American businessman. I've started 16 companies. 2 of those companies made the Inc. 500 list for the 500 fastest growing companies in America. And twice I've been Entrepreneur of the Year finalist here in our Southeast region. I believe in America. And I believe in the people of Western North Carolina that if given the opportunity, we can turn our district around, our economy around. We don't have to wait on the rest of the country or the rest of the state. I started a jobs plan back in August. I put it together and I've been working that jobs plan ever since. I've been to the Commerce Department in Raleigh and also up in Washington to find out what resources were available. I've been to all 17 counties talking to the county commissioners and the county managers to find out what kind of jobs they wanted. This is the kind of activity that causes jobs. We do not have to wait. My campaign is about jobs, prosperity, now. I have negotiated and done business around the world, and I know what the other countries, the companies in those countries are looking for. And it's the quality of life that we have here in Western North Carolina. With my jobs plan and a database that my company has of over 80,000 names, addresses, phone numbers that we've been working for the last 20 years, I will take my jobs plan and our community to the rest of the country and around the world. I believe in tax reform, to revise our tax code and simplify it, to get all forms of social engineering out of it. I am the only candidate that pushes for term limits to put our Congress on the 22nd Amendment, just like our president is. I believe we should approach the budget to stop the bleeding by the same way we do it in business. We consolidate, we cut, and then we control. This works in business, and it'll work in government. I support the Defense of Marriage Act, traditional marriage. I am against all forms of abortion. I believe any idea conceived by God should be cared for in this lifetime. I read and study the Bible every morning. The King James Version. I'm kind of old school. Not long ago, I read chapter 3, verse 16. Not John 3:16, but Daniel 3:16. It's where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are standing in front of Nebuchadnezzar in the fiery furnace. And they say, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter." And that is the attitude. That is what we need to say when standing up to political correctness. The first stand I'll take is to affirm God and government. I am not careful to answer in that matter. Not religion and government, but God and government. I worry every day that we're losing the America our parents left us. When we were growing up, could we have ever imagined borrowing money from a communist country? This election is huge. You need to decide which candidate is the most qualified. Which one has the plan, the attitude, and the passion to turn our economy around and restore prosperity. I'm asking for your support so I can restore prosperity and jobs to Western North Carolina. Thank you.